Hi everybody, it's me, Crafty Witch. This is my third time trying to make this video. I get too emotional, I start to cry, and then I stop. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time, but you never know. So this video is going to be a long rambling video because that's what I do best is ramble. You all know that. I'll be sharing some really personal stuff with you guys on what's been going on in my life that a lot of you probably had no clue about. You may or may not even care. If you don't, just click off the video. It's all good. Um, if you're curious, you can stick around. But it's impacted my magical practice in a huge, huge way. And I thought I gotta do this video, even if I get upset. Because there's got to be other witches out there, other pagans out there that may not be going through the exact same thing I'm going through, but can relate due to them going through their own experiences and having been impacted and having their own spiritual or magical practice impacted. I cannot be the only witch in the world that has been impacted. Um, so anyhow, I don't want to cry. Too late. Already started. Whew. Anyhow, this video will have a lot of trigger, or may have a lot of triggers for people. And I'm going to be touching on like abuse and physical harm and dark thoughts and things like that. So if that's a trigger for you, this is your clue and your warning to stop the video and not watch it. Okay, if you're still here, welcome to the insanity and to the madness, and let's have one hell of a ride. But it's something that I feel that I have to talk about with people because it's impacted, like I said, my practice. It's impacted every single facet of my life that I need to talk about it because it also, I'm hoping, will raise some awareness in the magical community, the pagan community, the witchcraft community. I don't give a frick what you want to call it, but it's got to raise some awareness there because I think a lot of things are really catered to people that are not struggling with any form of like physical disability. So let me just kind of back up the truck and just share some personal stuff. And this could be too much info for y'all. And you guys, I get it. Nobody gives a shit. Everybody goes through their own crap. And I get it. And I'm not doing this for pity, but I do want to raise awareness and I do want to share because I think it's important. And it's something that I never really thought about before until it boom impacted my life. And I don't, I've got a lot of books. I got like hundreds and hundreds of books, and I've probably had a few thousand books in my lifetime. I've given lots of books away, and a lot of my books, I keep looking at my bookshelf, but a lot of the stuff I have that's written from a kind of a pagan perspective, really a lot of them take for granted or makes the assumption that the reader is physically able to do certain things. And I was a reader that before never really thought about it until now. So anyway, going to my life now, and I'm all over the place, and I get it. I think I have ADHD. But anyhow, going to my own personal life, many years ago, my ex-husband, who is the father of my 3 sons, he and I were together for like 11 years. And out of that, we were married for maybe half of that, maybe a little less than half. But it was a physically, emotionally, um, mentally abusive relationship. It was really, really not good. And I sustained spinal trauma when I was about 17 years old. And then by the time I was 18, and we already had two children by that time, I I mean there'd be times I'd be walking and I would collapse. My legs would just give out and I'd fall down to the ground, and there'd be all this pain, and um going to see different doctors and neurologists at that time, and one doctor wanted to cut into my hip and remove bone from my hip and put it into my spine. And then this other neurologist wanted to put metal rods into my back. But the caveat to that is he told me that the operation, there would be a 50-50 chance of coming out paralyzed. I was 18. I had two little kids at the time. I could not imagine having a newborn and a 2-year-old because I was a young mom. Um, but I couldn't imagine having a newborn baby and a 2-year-old while I'm paralyzed from the waist down in a wheelchair trying to raise these two kids. Because when he said it was a 50-50 chance, that's literally a coin flip, right? So I said no thank you to the surgery, and then he proceeded to tell me that if I did not have that surgery back then, if I didn't go through with the surgery, by the time I was 28 years old, I would be in a wheelchair, I would be paralyzed from the waist down, and that would be the end of it. So I said, thank you, but no thank you. I'm going to take my chances. And so I did. So in one aspect, I guess I've been walking on borrowed legs uh, all this time. I'm now 48. I'm turning 49 this month. So I'm damn near 50, and I've made it this far, and I'm still walking. Still not paralyzed. Yay! However, last fall, um, and for the past 30 years or so, I have been living in chronic pain ever since then, okay? Sometimes it gets really, really bad, and it flares up, and then it would go away, and then it would come back every once in a while. And I've had a cane, yes, and then sometimes it would be really bad where I might have to use it for like maybe one day, and then I'd be okay. So I kind of always had a cane as a backup, but I never had to use it for more than like a day kind of thing, like with regards to my back. So last summer, last August, I noticed the pain in my back started to get to be more and more stronger. And I thought, oh gosh, it's just arthritis. I'm just getting old, like it happens. Well, let me tell you guys. Come September, I got rushed into the hospital because I couldn't walk. My two sons hauled me out to the vehicle. I was bawling my bloody head off. I was in so much pain. And that then started this long process of dealing with doctors and specialists and getting all forms of tests done. And so the diagnosis that the neurologist has come out to tell me is your spine is so badly damaged. It's the spine of somebody in their 70s, but the damage is so severe that we cannot operate at all. There is nothing that can be done other than pain management. It's degenerative spinal disease. It's this, and this. He listed off all this stuff. And And eventually, at some point in time, I may possibly wind up paralyzed from the waist down in a wheelchair. Which, I mean, they told me that when I was 18. I'm now turning 49. Eh. Part of me feels like, I had a good run. Not run per se, but, I had a good stretch of being able to walk, right? Not so bad. But it was kind of a hard pill to swallow, because there's so many things I want to do. And ever since September till now, it's now March, I've been walking with a cane, and I've been in and still am in physical therapy, which is done weekly, massage therapy, acupuncture. I'm in some kind of chronic pain program. I'm on a wait list to get into this other provincial spine pathway program. I'm doing everything I possibly can to deal with this from all different directions, all facets. I want to deal with it holistically, and to me, that means covering all my bases. I'm also in talk therapy about it too, because it's been a lot. The talk therapy thing, just as another caveat to the whole conversation, is my background is my background social work. I've been in this field since 1996. And when you're in human services, I am very much a strong believer. If you're in any kind of human services field, when you're working the front lines and you're dealing with all kinds of issues like rape and abuse and child neglect and child murder and you name it, poverty and gangs and blah, 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 you're dealing with a lot of things that most people in society don't have much exposure to, or don't have a real deep understanding of, or are not somehow connected to work with that on a daily basis. And because of that, I'm a strong, strong advocate and believer that if you are in any kind of frontline worker, whether you're a social worker, whether you're a cop, whether you're an EMT, whether you're a coroner, whatever that case is, any kind of counselor type position, when you work with abused people or what have you, if you're working with people in jail, whatever the case might be, that you should maintain your own mental wellness, your own mental health. And if that means going to talk to a therapist at the end of every month just to kind of let it out, because when you carry and you're exposed to trauma like that, you end up carrying that with you. It's called vicarious trauma. It does impact you. It does. And so I'm a strong believer in, go see a therapist. Go see somebody once a month just to kind of let it out. It's like going to a dentist, right? You want to go to a dentist regularly. You want to take care of your health, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. And that's just part of that. So anyway, I'm tackling this whole thing with my spine from all aspects, whether it's talk therapy, physiotherapy, acupuncture, going through all these other different avenues and venues and blah, 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 blah. So there's all that. And then dealing with the bloody emotional fucking repercussions of this whole thing has been really tough. Just to have to use that cane every day bothered me, still bothers me. But the feelings, the emotions, all that kind of stuff, I was not prepared for that. I felt ashamed. I felt embarrassed. I felt humiliated. I felt completely hopeless, helpless. I went from being like hyper oops, sorry, I got like a notification or an alarm, sorry. Like being from like hyper independent, which is a trauma response in itself, and to like not wanting or having to rely on anybody for anything because I'll do it my own self, because I've learned a long time ago never to rely on other people. Again, trauma response, to now I have to use a fucking cane. And to go up stairs, I can only go right now. It's been from September till March. I can only go up 4 stairs. I cannot go up 10 stairs or a whole flight of stairs. And it's frustrating. And it pisses me off. And I'm angry and I'm tired. And it's exhausting, right? So anyway, going through all that emotional stuff with it and being frustrated and angry, and you're going through a grieving process because part of you is grieving what you used to be able to do and now what you physically fucking can't do. And it pisses me off. And you got to learn how to modify everything in your life, from being able to put on a pair of socks and shoes and walking to getting in and out of a vehicle. Little things that I took for granted before, I have to plan out in advance now. If I'm going somewhere, it's really opened up my eyes because not every place in this world is wheelchair accessible. I'm not in a wheelchair, but if there's like 10 stairs or a flight of stairs to get to a certain thing, whatever it is, I can't do it. I physically fucking can't do it. Yeah, it's pissing me off, but it's opened up my eyes in so many ways to so many different things that affect my witchcraft practice. And I'm going to get there eventually, I swear. Anyway, so there's that. And so going through all these emotions, shame, embarrassment, and then having well-meaning friends tell me, you shouldn't be ashamed to use your cane. You shouldn't be embarrassed. Is like telling somebody who's grieving, well, you shouldn't feel bad that that person died. Or you shouldn't, you know what I mean? It's like, fuck off. I feel embarrassed. I feel ashamed because I never had to use something like that permanently or consistently. You know, yes, I had a cane before, but I maybe would only have to use it for a day and then I'd be good, right? Now, like, I haven't not used that cane since September, and it's been a long time. My ultimate goal is to get to the point where I don't need to use that cane again. I don't know if I'm going to get there. I don't know if it's going to be like this until the point where I'm in a fucking wheelchair. That's reality. So, right, dealing with all that crap. I never shared that with you guys until now. I would put out some videos. You normally see me sitting on the couch or maybe at the kitchen table. You might notice I shift a lot. Like, I'll kind of adjust my position, and that's because of my spine and the pain that I'm in. But it's impacted everything. I can't just go and gather, harvest, pick medicines, herbs, things from out in the wild the way I used to be able to. I physically cannot do that. So yeah, it's had a huge fucking impact on every aspect of my life, from putting socks on my feet to going out into the woods. I can't do what I used to be able to do. Um, I used to cycle up to like 10 kilometers a day, which may not be a lot for a lot of people, but for me, I was like, I really enjoyed that. I used to go, there was a walking path, not like in the town where I live. I used to go and do that. And, it was like a couple kilometers, whatever it was. I enjoyed doing that. I cannot even do that. I can't can't walk from where my house is to the end of the block. If I get to the end of the block, there's no way I can walk back home because I physically, my back will be in so much pain I can't do it. So, um, it's impacted everything. And it's opened my eyes to things because before, when I was more able to do things like that, I didn't really give much consideration to how a lot of stuff is written in any kind of book pertaining to, say, witchcraft or magic, paganism, but how much a lot of those books, a lot of it is geared towards able bodied people. They talk about going off to, I don't know, walking through the woods to go gather a stag, to go pick this and that herbs. They talk about, doing this and that. And I mean, you can modify stuff and do it in your home, but, um, you know, casting the circle, treading the mill. And I found myself when I read Keldon's book, which I do like his book, The Crooked Path. I'd done a book review on it, and I didn't talk about, I purposely did not mention this in that book review because he's not the only author. Pretty much every other author out there that's written about stuff like this really hasn't talked about it. And hasn't thought about whether or not their practice is inclusive to people with physical disabilities or any kind of disability, really, right? So, like, if you're in a wheelchair and you can't just, go trucking through the forest in your wheelchair to go and look for a stag because you're in a wheelchair and you might have to stick to a paved pathway, you may not have the opportunity to find those kind of magical tools that people talk about. Or what about when they talk about like casting the circle or treading, uh, not treading the mill, but like, laying the compass and yeah, treading the mill, doing all those kind of things where they talk about like going in circles and, gaining that momentum. But if you're in a wheelchair, I'm not saying it can't be done, but it can be kind of difficult and maybe a lot tiring, a lot more tiring if you're in a wheelchair. So a lot of these books that I read, or now that I look back on, now I'm thinking from the mindset of somebody with a physical impairment, disability, and now I'm wondering and I'm questioning how inclusive is your witchcraft practice. Now, if it's just for you and only you, and you don't need to worry about any kind of mobility issues, and you have no physical disabilities, and you're good to go, and you can walk for like 20 miles, yay for you. But if you're a teacher and like you're trying to teach the craft, you're trying to have a coven, you're trying to, have other people join you, how inclusive is your practice truly? What about if somebody shows up and they're really interested, but they happen to be in a wheelchair? What kind of modifications are you going to do to your practice to accommodate that? Or are you? Or are you going to exclude them? Because when I look, like I keep looking over there. My books are all over there. But when I look at these books and when I hear people talk about it, a lot of it is under the assumption that whoever they're talking to or whoever their audience is able bodied, is physically able to go and do these things. But what about people that are disabled? What about people that have physical impairments and they may not be able to go trucking through the bush to look for a stag because it's physically not, they're not able to? What about somebody who maybe is paralyzed from the chest down? How are they going to, do those kinds of things? What in your practice is excluding other people without you even realizing it. Maybe you should think about that. Maybe these authors that are putting out these freaking books, and maybe this is my anger coming out and being misdirected. Who knows? But it's really opened my eyes to things. I can't go to my local movie theater because they've got, like, I don't know how many steps. Um, you can enter ground level and then you gotta go up a bunch of steps, and there's no wheelchair ramp. So, like, if it was a wheelchair ramp, I'd be able to, like, hobble up the ramp. But it's like, there's got to be other people in this town that are in wheelchairs, and not one of them can go to our movie theater because it's not wheelchair accessible. So things like that, it's really opened up my eyes. And when it comes to, like, magical practice and stuff like that, a lot of these books are written for able-bodied individuals that don't have any physical impairments. And it's really coming through loud and clear that it's excluding people that are physically impaired. And whether or not that's the intention of the author is irrelevant. I don't see any modifications or people saying, like, if you're unable to, then, granted, in some books they might say, well, if you can't do a ceremony outside, you could do it inside, you could do it indoors. That's fine. But when people are encouraging people to go outside, to go collect this or that from the wild, I think keeping in mind that maybe some people may not physically even be able to do that. And it can be really frustrating when you're reading something like that, because it's like, well, what about those that can't? Because now they're already being excluded, whether or not you intend them to be. It's kind of like they're being excluded. They now would either have to rely on ordering it, buying it from somebody else, maybe sending somebody else into the woods to go look for whatever for them, you know. When you're talking about casting circles or laying the compass and stuff like this, and you're talking about, gaining momentum and treading the mill and whatever the case might be, and you're going in circles and you're gaining that speed and all that kind of stuff. Whoa, what about if the person's in a wheelchair? And the way you're describing it in the book is like, and you kind of got to drag your foot behind you or whatever the hell it is. And it's like, dude, people, please. What about somebody who's in a wheelchair? If you're part of a coven, does your coven, what kind of, would you even accept somebody that was physically disabled? Some people might go, well, of course we're not going to, discriminate. And then some people, truthfully, might go, yeah, you know what? It would be just too complicated. It'd be better not to even have that person be part of our circle. And that's reality. For some covens that maybe practice skyclad, you may not want somebody that's fat like me showing up naked and going, hello, ladies and gents, here I am. You might have, you want people to look a certain way. You might want people that have the ability to, physically be able to walk and dance around in a circle with you, to join you in your rites when, that would make people that are physically unable to, or unable to rather, to even participate or even be welcome. So how inclusive is your practice? And if it's not inclusive, whether that's intentional or not, are you going to modify that somehow to be more inclusive to other people that may not be able to do certain things? And if you're writing and you're putting out books, I don't care who you are, when you're talking to go and, like, pretty much every author I've ever read, whether it's Wiccan or witchcraft related or whatever, when they talk about, going off into the woods or, going and climbing some mountaintop and doing this or that, it's always seems to be coming from the perspective of an able-bodied person, and thus it automatically, like, their audience, the assumption is that the audience is completely able-bodied, and anybody with any kind of physical impairment is just kind of not included in that. And that's for the vast majority. There might be the odd book or the odd author here and there that might include something, but that I think is pretty far and few between. So that's opened my eyes to the pagan community, to any kind of traditional witchcraft teachings, to any kind of Wiccan teachings, to any kind of pagan teachings. And that includes books, people on YouTube, um, different covens and groups and circles and all that kind of jazz. I want to know from you guys, how inclusive is your path? How have you guys incorporated uh, that consideration for people that maybe have physical disabilities? Do you allow people with physical disabilities to be part of your group? If so, great. What kind of modifications have you done with your practice, with your training, with your teachings? If you're telling somebody in a book to go off into the woods and go collect a stag, but they're in a wheelchair and they're confined to only paved pathways through a public park, for instance, and they can't go into the wild bush somewhere to go and collect stuff, then you're excluding them. Whether you intend to or not, you're still excluding them. It's not being inclusive at all. And just because somebody is physically disabled or impaired in some way doesn't mean that they have any less value in the circle. It doesn't mean that their magic is any less powerful. It's it's just their body that they're working with. And then on the flip side of that, what about people with like mental or emotional or those kind of disabilities and impairments? Are they going to be excluded? Would you exclude somebody, say, with Down syndrome from wanting to join your group or to learn more about it or your practice? Are you going to say that somebody with some sort of mental impairment or diagnosis or what have you, that their magic isn't as powerful, isn't as potent, that they don't have as much value in your magical path or teachings or what have you? I think that these authors of all of this stuff really need to kind of just, check themselves a little bit, because I think they're all writing from a perspective of able-bodied individuals, and that they think that their audience is that's all it is, kind of thing. And they're not kind of considering, well, how can a person, let's say that they are paralyzed from the neck down, how can they, I don't know, cast the circle? Or how can they tread the mill or lay the compass? Or how can they go, you know, what can they do in lieu of blah, blah, blah? Are you going to write books and keep putting out books that are just pumped directly to just able-bodied people and to hell with everybody else? So that's, yeah, that's just something, that's my own little rant, because I never really gave it much thought before. I just figured, I didn't think about it really, because why? Because it didn't really impact me. Now that it has, it's like it's really opened my eyes to whether, like, just how inclusive is paganism, and how inclusive is your particular witchcraft path. How inclusive, especially if you want to, kind of generate your own, or have your own coven, or have your own group or circle, or you want to teach people, or you want to write books and, explain to them about casting circles, or laying the compass, or whatever you want to call it. And what about people that are in wheelchairs? It's no different than, let's say, somebody wanted to go into a sweat lodge. Well, what about if that person's in a wheelchair? Most sweat lodges, the entrance is pretty low. They're expected to sit on the ground, blah, blah, blah. So if they're in a wheelchair, are they automatically going to be excluded from that experience? Or are they able to be removed from the wheelchair, carried inside the sweat lodge somehow, propped up somehow? Because some people may not be able to sit up on their own, especially if they're kind of paralyzed, all that kind of stuff. So, like, even in cultural practices, what cultural practices are truly inclusive? What about people that do have physical disabilities or mental impairments and things like that? How inclusive is that path for them? And is anybody even raising any kind of awareness? Or are we just going to take for granted that only able bodied people are practicing the craft and to hell with everybody else? And I'm being sarcastic because I don't, I don't think people think that, or at least I hope they don't. But there's probably some folks and some groups out there that would prefer not to have people with physical, mental, impairments of any kind, because in their mind, they see you as being defective in some way and that you can't possibly raise power and stuff like that. And I think that's total bullshit. And I really don't care if you could have FASD, or you could be in a wheelchair, or you could have schizophrenia or bipolar. I believe that everybody has value, and I believe that anybody can be pagan, anybody can be a witch, anybody can be Wiccan, whatever their path is. And I believe that regardless of whatever physical and mental, emotional impairments you might have, limitations, disabilities, that you still are able to generate power. You're still able to have powerful magic and a powerful spirit about you. And I don't think it takes away from you, but I think these authors and these groups and folks, we need to recognize that there's other people out there that may not physically be able to do those things anymore. I myself happen to be one of them. My goal, though, with my physical therapy and everything else that I'm trying to do, is I want to stop using my cane. I want to be able to not have to use it. Currently, sorry, currently, I can only walk up 4 steps. I can't go any higher than that. And that's with the cane and using a handrail at the same time. That's my reality currently. I want to be able to completely ditch the cane. I can walk on flat surfaces now on good days without my cane for short distances. So I can go, say, from my bedroom to the bathroom, from the kitchen table to the sink without using my cane on a good day. On a bad day, I still have to use it. Currently, any kind of stair, any kind of step, I have to use the cane and a handrail at the same time. Does it suck? Fucking rights it does. I fucking hate it. I hate using the cane. And it's not even a badass cool cane. I call it a granny stick. It's just a plain black cane because, black is my favorite color, and it's just a plain curved little handle. It's nothing cool. It's nothing nice. I've looked at some canes online, but a lot of them are like for cosplay or they're for decorative purposes, and it's just kind of like, why can't they make beautiful, cool, kick-ass canes that are like sturdy and meant for like disabled folks? Why does it have to be like these ugly canes a granny would use? I don't know. That's just me. That's my ramblings. And that's what's been going on in my life since last September till now. It's now March. And, I've been just doing a lot of processing and thinking and trying to do healing and trying to tackle this, like I said, from a holistic perspective. But it's really opened my eyes to how everybody, like all these authors and speakers and teachers of this path, have really taken for granted that their audience is all able-bodied, and it pisses me off because there really doesn't seem to be much consideration for us folks that are disabled. And I admit I was kind of part of that group too, but now it's really opened my eyes because, yeah, if I was going to host, let's say, some ceremony somewhere, And if it was going to be like out in the middle of the woods in a beautiful little clearing, but you have to truck through and hike through these woods there, aesthetically that'd be great and beautiful and gorgeous. And, out in the forest. But if somebody was in a wheelchair or they didn't have the mobility to be able to walk very far, that would be difficult. And they would be excluded from that. And that, damn, that cuts, Like, I don't ever want to be exclusive. Not exclusive, but like, I don't want to, exclude people from anything I share. I don't want to exclude anybody at all. I'm a strong believer that we all have value and we should be really inclusive for everybody. I don't care if like I said, if you have Down syndrome or FASD, or if you have schizophrenia, or if you are in a wheelchair, or if you are blind, or whatever the case is. I believe personally you still have a spirit, a soul. I believe you are worthy. I believe you can generate incredible, powerful magic. And I believe you should be included. But all these authors I read, they don't seem to think outside of the box or think beyond able-bodied audience. You know, they, you know, seem to just write from an able-bodied perspective, and that's great on their end. Um, but it really excludes those of us that are struggling or are living with disabilities. I'm struggling with mine. But shit happens, right? You gotta do what you gotta do. Anyhow, um, who knows? Maybe I should write a book. What do you guys think? Should I write a book? It would probably take me fucking decades to get it written, but I would fucking love to see a book written by a pagan author, whether you're a witch or a Wiccan, I don't care, a heathen, I don't care, whatever. But I'd love to see pagan authors start writing, thinking about who their audience is, and realizing and not making the assumption that it's only able-bodied individuals that can participate or do these things, and create rituals and practices that will include other folks that maybe are paralyzed from the neck down, that can only work with the power of their mind. Maybe they physically can't hold a staff or a wand or a knife or a sword, things like that, because a lot of the stuff is all written just for able-bodied people. So to me, that's a very exclusionary way of practice, and I think it's time we kind of bring awareness to that, right? Another form of exclusion, and now I'm really ranting, goes into the whole gender thing, and but that's probably a video for another day. This is long enough. This is like 43 minutes of me just rambling on and on and on and on and having a little bit of a pity party. So anyhow, just food for thought. Does your practice exclude people with disabilities? Does your style of teaching exclude people with disabilities? Are you automatically making the assumption that everybody of your audience is just able-bodied and they could just go walking somewhere to go and pick whatever, and they could walk for however long, however, whatever the distance is, when somebody like me can maybe walk, I don't know, 10 feet without a cane, on a very flat man-made surface kind of thing. Yeah, so food for thought. Start thinking about that. Share your experiences. Are you disabled? Do you have any impairments, physical disabilities, or anything else? And have you noticed that too? That a lot of the sources out there are geared more towards able-bodied folks and that kind of thing. Have you experienced any kind of discrimination within the pagan community because of being disabled and not being able to go and do those things, or to go collect your tools from the wild when maybe you can't because you physically can't roll your wheelchair out into the middle of the bush somewhere to go collect whatever? um, I want to hear those stories. I want to generate a discussion, so comment down below. Love you guys.